In April 2005, a man was found wandering a country road in Kent, England. He was soaking wet. He wore a formal suit that was entirely inappropriate for where he was found. He carried nothing. No wallet, no phone, no keys. Every label had been cut from his clothing. Every single one. He was taken to a hospital. And there, for the next 4 weeks, he said nothing. Not a word. Not a name. Not a response to a direct question. Nothing. Staff gave him a piece of paper and a pen, in the hope that he might write something. His name, an address, anything. Instead, he drew a piano. They found a piano and brought him to it. He sat down and played for hours. Classical music, complex compositions, performed with the fluency and sensitivity of someone who had trained for years. He was, by any professional measure, an exceptional musician. And still, no one knew who he was. The press got hold of the story. They called him the Piano Man. His photograph was distributed across 30 countries. Over 200 people came forward claiming he was a missing relative. Psychiatric assessors, linguists, and musicians were brought in. None of them could determine his identity or nationality from his behavior alone. He simply existed, fed, cared for, watched over, completely unreachable. For 4 months, the man who could play Tchaikovsky could not, or would not, say his own name. Then, in August 2005, he spoke. He was Andreas Grassel, a 20-year-old German man from the town of Prosdorf in Bavaria. He had left Germany some weeks earlier, in the grip of what appeared to be a severe psychological crisis. He had walked to the coast of France. He had taken the ferry to England. He had made his way to Kent, and somewhere in that journey, he had fallen apart. Why he had cut the labels from his clothes, why he had refused to speak, what he was running from, and what the piano truly meant in those months of silence, he has never fully explained. He returned to Germany, gave one interview years later, and has spoken publicly about his disappearance almost not at all. But Andreas Grassel's story opened a door onto something that is far stranger and more disturbing than any single case. The phenomenon of dissociative fugue. A fugue state, from the Latin for flight, is a documented neurological and psychological condition in which a person loses access not merely to certain memories, but to their entire identity. They do not forget specific events. They forget who they are. Sufferers of dissociative fugue can walk, talk, and function entirely normally. They can hold conversations. They can navigate cities. They can perform complex tasks. But they cannot tell you their name, their address, or anything at all about the person they were before the fugue began. In some cases, fugue states last hours. In others, they last years. And in the most extreme documented cases, they can persist indefinitely. Consider the case of Jody Roberts. In 1985, she was a journalist for the Tacoma News Tribune. One day, she simply didn't come to work. She was reported missing. Police found no trace of her. 12 years later, a woman called Jane D. was living in Aurora, Colorado. She had a job. She had friends. She had adopted 4 children. She had no memory whatsoever of the 12 years before she arrived in Colorado, or of the life she had lived in Tacoma. She was Jody Roberts. She did not know it. Even more striking is the case of a man who spent years being called Benjamin Kyle. In 2004, a man was found unconscious behind a Burger King dumpster in Richmond Hill, Georgia. He had severe sunburn. He had no identification. When he recovered consciousness, He could not say who he was. He gave investigators the only name he could think of, BK, for the restaurant where he had been found. They called him Benjamin Kyle. His fingerprints matched nothing in any database. His face matched nothing in any missing persons record. For 11 years, this man lived without an identity, the only American citizen legally documented as missing, whose identity was unknown even to himself. He was homeless, mostly, sustained by advocates and strangers, who were moved by his story. In 2015, a genetic genealogist used DNA testing to trace his family line. His name was William Burgess Powell. He had siblings. He had a history. He had a life he had lived for over 60 years, that he had absolutely no access to. What neuroscience understands about dissociative fugue is still incomplete. It appears to be triggered by extreme psychological stress, trauma, fear, emotional overwhelm. That causes the brain to essentially file away the self. Not delete it. File it somewhere inaccessible, a self-protective shutdown. But what that means in practice is this. The person you are, your memories, your relationships, your sense of who you are in the world, is not as permanent as it feels. It is, on some level, a story your brain tells about you. And under sufficient pressure, the brain can stop telling that story entirely. Andreas Grassel played piano in a hospital in Kent for 4 months. He played with technical skill and emotional depth. He played as though music was the only thing left of him. Maybe, for those 4 months, it was.